London, 1888. In the East End stood Whitechapel, a crowded district shaped by poverty, industry, and overcrowding. For many residents, life was difficult. Housing was cramped, work was uncertain, and survival could depend on each day's earnings. Cheap lodging houses provided shelter for those without stable homes. For many, simply earning enough to survive was difficult. Whitechapel was also diverse. Industry, trade, and immigration brought people from different backgrounds into its crowded streets. Policing Whitechapel was difficult. The Criminal Investigation Department had existed since 1878, but modern forensic science was still decades away, and as summer approached, nobody knew that Whitechapel was about to become infamous for an unsolved series of murders. The first was Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. She was 43, had been married, and had 5 children. Annie Chapman was 47. She had been married and had children, but by 1888, her life had become increasingly unstable. Elizabeth Stride was 44 and originally from Sweden. In Whitechapel, she earned money through casual work, including cleaning. Catherine Eddowes was 46. Shortly before her death, she had returned to London after working in Kent during the hop-picking season. The youngest was Mary Jane Kelly. She was believed to be in her 20s and lived in a small room in Whitechapel. They were 5 different women with different lives, but in the autumn of 1888, their names would become permanently linked by murder. On August 31st, 2 carmen discovered Mary Ann Nichols in Bucks Row and alerted the police. Eight days later, Annie Chapman was discovered dead in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. On September 30th, Elizabeth Stride was discovered in Dutfield's yard. Her death appeared different from the earlier cases. Less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was discovered in nearby Mitre Square. 2 women had now been killed that night. On November 9th, Mary Jane Kelly was discovered dead inside her room at Miller's Court. 5 women were now dead. Investigators began looking at the cases together, wondering whether one killer was responsible. At Bucks Row, police examined the scene and questioned people living nearby. But there was little that immediately identified the killer. At Hanbury Street, investigators carefully examined the backyard, searching the surrounding fences, walls, and garden paths for clues. Doctors also examined the victims, recording injuries and other findings that could help determine how the murders had been carried out. Witnesses were questioned about suspicious people, movements and sounds around the times of the murders. The evidence was extensive, but it did not produce a clear identification. The killer remained unknown. Investigators had witnesses, medical findings, and crime scene observations. What they lacked was the one piece of evidence that could reveal the killer's identity. After the murders, detectives worked through witness statements and reports, trying to establish a connection between the cases. Officers increased patrols through Whitechapel, searching the streets and watching areas where another attack might occur. Police questioned witnesses repeatedly, recording descriptions of suspicious people and movements around the murder locations. The investigation involved both the Metropolitan Police and City of London Police, whose jurisdictions overlapped around the murders. After the double murder on September 30th, the City of London Police offered a £500 reward for information leading to the killer's conviction. Despite the growing investigation, the police had made no arrest. Every promising lead seemed to end without identifying the killer. Before the name Jack the Ripper appeared, newspapers and officials generally referred to the unknown killer as the Whitechapel murderer. On September 27th, the Central News Agency received a handwritten letter claiming to have been written by the murderer. The letter ended with a signature that would become famous: Jack the Ripper. It was the first known appearance of the name in connection with the murders. The letter was forwarded to Scotland Yard, where investigators examined it alongside the growing collection of evidence from Whitechapel. Once the letter was made public, the name began appearing in newspapers and quickly became associated with the Whitechapel murders. The name was now attached to the case, but it gave investigators no confirmed identity. Behind the name, the killer remained unknown. The first famous letter was the so-called Dear Boss letter, received by the Central News Agency on September 27, 1888. The writer claimed to be responsible for the murders and used the name Jack the Ripper, but the letter itself did not prove who had written it. A few days later, a postcard appeared with the name Jack the Ripper and references to the murders. It became known as the Saucy Jackie postcard. The letters attracted enormous attention, but investigators had no reliable way to establish that the writer was actually the murderer. Then came another famous letter, received by George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. It became known as the From Hell letter. Today, the letters remain controversial. Some may have been genuine, while others may have been hoaxes designed to exploit the growing fascination with the murders. With the killer still unidentified, investigators and later writers proposed a long list of possible suspects. One later suspect was Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher. His name became prominent after claims that senior police officials suspected a doctor who died soon after the murders. Another important name was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-born barber who lived in the Whitechapel area. George Chapman was another later suspect. He had worked as a barber and was later convicted of poisoning 3 women. Francis Tumblety, an American eccentric and self-styled doctor, was arrested in London in November 1888. His unusual behaviour attracted suspicion, but no suspect was ever conclusively identified as Jack the Ripper. In 1888, investigators lacked many forensic tools we now take for granted. There was no DNA testing, fingerprint database. Whitechapel was a crowded district, but there were no cameras recording the streets. After an attack, investigators had to reconstruct events from witnesses. Witnesses' memories were imperfect, especially when events happened quickly or in poor lighting. The murders also crossed police boundaries. Most occurred in Metropolitan Police territory, while Catherine Eddowes was killed in the City of London. The investigation generated a huge number of reports and possible leads. But separating useful information from rumours and false claims was extremely difficult. The police had gathered witnesses, evidence, and countless leads, but none produced a confirmed identity. On November 9th, 1888, Mary Jane Kelly was murdered in Miller's Court. She is traditionally considered the final victim of the canonical 5. And then, the murders traditionally linked to the Ripper suddenly stopped. No further killing was conclusively connected to the same offender. Police continued dealing with the wider investigation, but the trail left by the killer produced no confirmed identity and no clear explanation for his disappearance. Over time, theories multiplied. Some believed the killer died, left the country, was imprisoned, or simply stopped. None of these explanations has been proven. As the years passed, the unsolved murders became one of the most famous criminal mysteries in history. More than a century later, we still do not know who Jack the Ripper was, why the murders stopped, or what became of the man behind the name. the mystery remains unsolved.